And good evening, fellow adventurers in space and time. It is Drew Wager here, back once again for more waffling and general entertainment on all things science fiction and fantasy. Welcome to Monday, and welcome all to our online discussion stuff and streaming and things. So here we are again. It's all good. It's all good. Auditioning for the next Doctor. I think I actually. I quite like the idea of being the next Doctor Who, but I'm pretty sure I can't act. I don't think that's my skill. I may be many things, as you know, but I don't think acting is one of my fortes. I suspect, but I always have a great deal of admiration because so this is a good start for waffling actually. So you just need to react. Yeah, run down corridors a lot to be Doctor Who, don't you? That's right. And make quips and have a lot. I used to have a sonic screwdriver. I don't know what I've done with it. It's probably busted. But yeah, I mean, and Doctor Who is. To be honest, I am not the world's biggest Doctor Who fan. Some episodes of Doctor Who are really, really rather good, and some episodes are just like, nope, I didn't enjoy that at all. So Doctor Who comes and goes for me. It's never consistent. I mean, I'm a third Doctor. I'm a Tom Baker. He's the Doctor as far as I'm concerned. All the others are nah. Tom Baker is my Doctor because I'm old, but yeah, he's the third Doctor. He's not he's one of the early ones, but he's not the earliest one because Doctor Who started back in the days of black and white TV. That's how old it is. Tom Baker was fourth, was he? Sorry, yes, that's right. But I thought he was the third. Is that not right? Oh well, he's the fourth. Oh, okay. I stand corrected. Sorry, obviously my Doctor Who lore is not very good. Tom Baker in K9 says Mad Monks. Yes, so that was good stuff. I should have worn it since I didn't know we were going to be talking about Doctor Who. So I have got a Doctor Who pin badge, but I've got my telescope on for this evening because reason. So John Pertwee was the best. He was the third. Okay. So everyone, basically, I think the best Doctor Who is the one that you first saw. I think that's how it works. Now I sort of remember watching Doctor Who in the late 70s. And so it was Tom Baker for me. K9 was axed because it made the Doctor's job too easy. A bit like the sonic screwdriver, I suppose. I found William Hartnell rather creepy, but I was only about 8 when he first appeared, says Alan. So now I don't really recall the previous Doctors to Tom Baker. I think Tom Baker and K9 were the ones I remember seeing. I like the David Tennant Doctor most, I guess, as Glenn. So that's more modern. David Tennant, to be honest, David Tennant was very good. So and anyway, when they reimagined the show back in, that's actually a while back now, isn't it? When it kind of was brought back. They changed it around a bit, but they made it a bit more exciting and a bit more, tiny bit more moralistic, I think, certainly at times. Billboard Gammons, I've never watched Doctor Who and I don't have any incentive to start. No, it is patchy. There are some brilliant episodes of Doctor Who, which are right up there in my list of good science fiction stories. But there are some absolutely tragic ones as well. And in my humble opinion, the number of tragic episodes of Doctor Who far outweighs the worthy ones, because certainly the early episodes were made on a BBC budget, which is a very small thing for science fiction back in the 70s and 80s, so you can't expect very much of them. And even the later ones, once the BBC had somehow managed to get hold of some CGI and actually started getting reasonably good at it, then the writing was just all over the place. Sometimes it could be absolutely excellent. I'm thinking of my favourite Doctor Who episode of recent times is an episode called Blink. And if you look up Blink, it's the perfect Doctor Who episode as far as I'm concerned. You've got a wacky alien. You've got time travel that actually is about time travel, so there's actually some time travelling going on. The Doctor's trying to solve clues. Actually, no, the Doctor is giving out clues to a bunch of other people who are chasing around. And it's just a really, really cleverly written episode, which is basically making you think all the way along. There's that slight sort of Doctor Who horror thing, which is always lampooned in the UK. You know, the sort of stuff that makes you want to grab a pillow and hide behind the sofa. It's that sort of stuff. So there's mild horror in there. There's time travel. There's lots of running around down corridors, obviously, and then there's that time element, which is all the mixtures of a proper classic Doctor Who episode. That's probably, I think, one of the best ones of recent times. But a lot of the time, it's just a lot of vague exposition and dialogue that doesn't make any sense, and an awful lot of Doctor Who is like that. And you just what's he saying? Why is he doing that? It makes no sense at all. There's no logic going on. And lore continuity, and that probably is the underlying reason I don't like Doctor Who, is because lore continuity is there just isn't. And I've made my views known on this, and I've discovered today, actually, I'm one of my heroes. Takes the opposite stance to me, so my list of allies grows thin. Is apparently, and I haven't managed to find the original quote for this, but apparently Leonard Nimoy, most famous for playing Mr. Spock in Star Trek, of course, basically said of those who like the lore of Star Trek, I'm assuming he was talking about, basically he said, well, it's only because they like the minutiae of detail, and what they really need to do is open their minds to new possibilities and new frontiers and embrace the new Star Trek. So whether or not he was sort of paid off to basically say promote the new Star Trek, Mr. Spock, because obviously there was a thing about the retconning of Star Trek for the new movies, or not, I don't know. But anyway, Leonard Nimoy, to my great disappointment, is not stamping on the retcons. He's telling us to embrace them, and no, I'm not. I don't agree personally. I like my lore to be consistent and valuable and contiguous where much as possible. So there we go. Glenn says, yes, that's the ultimate rejoinder to Mr. Leonard Nimoy, isn't it? Bless his soul, because of course he's died, dearly departed. But yes, he did sing that Bilbo song, didn't he? So I mean, does his opinion really matter? No, it doesn't, does it? And Daleks, yes, the Daleks were a fearsome alien race for the Doctor to counter in Doctor Who, of course, which due to, I assume, BBC special effects budgets, they were basically wheeled boxes with sink plungers and another device on the front, and they basically did a lot of shouting. Daleks, they seem to be constantly annoyed, and their key phrase was exterminate. That's what they did. They went around exterminating things, and apparently they were an ultra powerful sort of space empire from the planet. Is it Skaro? I'm not very good on my Doctor Who lore. I think it's Skaro. Anyway, so if for some strange reason you don't know what a Dalek looks like, it's basically it's kind of like a bobbly box with a hood over the top. And it certainly appears to, at least and you certainly can see it in the original low budget Doctor Who's, roll around on wheels, which is fine as long as you've got totally smooth floors everywhere in the entire universe. So the only problem is that Daleks could easily be defeated in the 70s and the 80s, particularly by having either one of two things: rough ground, where of course their dolly wheels would get stuck, or some stairs. So it's just the idea of this fearsome alien, terrifying, be-weaponed bunch of aliens who haven't figured out that actually having a very, very short wheelbase with long overhangs it's not a very good way to locomate around the universe. So it's very, very easy to defeat the Daleks, certainly in the 70s and 80s, by either, I think, throwing a blanket over their hood so they couldn't remove it, and then pushing them into a wall or a closet, whereupon they're stuck because they couldn't. They didn't. I don't think Daleks had a reverse gear, something they hadn't needed on Skaro, and presumably the surface of the planet Skaro is entirely smooth everywhere. and I think you see the Dalek base in one episode, or one of the early episodes. They've clearly invented lifts, so they go up and down using lifts to different levels in their baddie base. There are no stairs. So, in a rather Hitchhiker-esque sort of way, it appears that the Daleks invented the elevator before they invented the stairs. So all sorts of interesting ways to defeat the Daleks. The Daleks were creatures using the casing as radio. Yeah, because the Daleks are actually a sort of bubbly thing that lives inside the case. So the Daleks aren't the shell. That's their sort of protect. They're kind of like brains that inhabit a machine, I suppose, effectively. But they haven't really designed the machine very well, the Daleks, to be honest. However, you do see the Daleks ultimately. But when CGI comes along, suddenly the Daleks are able to fly, and the old dodge of running up the staircase no longer works. So it's like, I'm foiled again. So that's the thing. Question: as a sci-fi author, what is your opinion on the Kardashev Scale? Now that's the one, as I recall, where you have type 0, type 1, type 2, type 3 civilizations, isn't it? And I can't remember off the top of my head the definitions. I think basically it's you've managed to grab the entire output of your planet, then the entire output of a star, then the entire output of something else, and then the entire output of a galaxy or something like that. And type 0 to 3, yeah, okay. So can somebody type in the definitions, because I can't remember what they are. I know there's something like that. So anyways, so there we go. That's anyway, Daleks. That's like I wasn't supposed to be talking about Daleks, so so there's the waffle. Okay, so type 1 is planet, type 2 is star, type 3 is galaxy. Okay, so what's type 0? Okay, Wintermute says they were first seen to climb stairs in the 80s when Sylvester McCoy was the Doctor. Oh, I sort of missed it because I can't stand Sylvester McCoy at all. I'm sure he's a perfectly decent chap, I should say that, but I can't stand him at all in anything. Actually, Doctor Who, Lord of the Rings, Hobbit, nothing. Yeah, he's just an actor who I just don't like. Okay, sorry, Sylvester McCoy. I don't like your characters. I'm sure he's a lovely chap. I don't like his acting at all. Okay, so type 1 is the planet. What's type 0 then? Type 0 is less than a home planet. Okay, so we're basically type 0. Type 1 is the planet, type 2 is a star, type 3 is a galaxy. So I can just about, I suppose, imagine a civilization that can harness the power of a star. But the type 3, I mean, it's a big jump, isn't it? Okay, we've harnessed the power of the star. We made a type 2 civilization. Yay! What's next? Oh, we need to go for type 3. What's that? We need to harness the power of 400 billion stars. Okay, that seems like quite a lot. What are we going to do with all that power? I don't know. I mean, what would you what would you do with that? I mean, what sort of construction project does require the entire output of a galaxy to be harnessed by some alien civilization? I don't know. There's got to be. That's a pretty big problem you're trying to solve. Yeah, Dyson Sphere, or Dyson Swarm, or something like that. I can see civilizations approaching that. That seems like something that maybe somebody would do. And maybe, if you need to generate I don't know, we don't know how to do it, of course, but if we wanted to generate a time gate or a warp gate or some kind of, hyperspace bypass, something like that, you can sort of begin to think that maybe a star is the sort of power source that you might need to do it. But to harness the entire output of a galaxy, I mean, what are you going to do? Carl Sagan added type 4, which is the whole universe. It's going to take you a long time, isn't it? We've got the entire lifespan of the universe in order to control it. Yeah, I can't see what you'd use all that energy for. So that's a lot, basically. I don't know. Is it a what's it? Not a straight scale. What's the word? logarithmic. Is it a logarithmic scale rather than a sort of straight one? Because there's a big jump, isn't there? 1, 2, 3, and 4 in that case. I guess with the galaxy, you're going to be basically moving galaxies around. You want to re-architect the whole of space. I suppose if the only reason I can imagine that you would want to harness the entire power of a galaxy is to potentially maybe recreate the Big Bang or something like that. I don't know how much energy you would need to do that. Harness the entire output of the Milky Way in order to move it out of the way of Andromeda. Yeah, so it's logarithmic scale. So yeah, I don't know. Seems like an awfully complicated thing to do. To be honest, if I was in charge of galactic reorganisation and planning, and I saw, as indeed the case, is that the Andromeda Galaxy and the Milky Way galaxy are, we believe, on a collision course in several million years' time, I think I'd just plan an orderly evacuation over several millennia. I think that would be, rather than trying to move the galaxies, let's just evacuate. To go to another galaxy and see and just watch the fireworks from over there. I don't know. Maybe you'd want to harness the entire galaxy to stop space from expanding, I suppose. So okay, so undoing the whole dark matter thing. Yeah, I mean, who knows? I mean, with that much power. Stop the universe expanding. No to universe expanding. You can see all the placards being waved at Alpha Centauri. Maybe there is a Type 3 in Andromeda who's just going to use the Milky Way as a giant furnace to power them. So this is definitely getting quite speculative. So I don't know. I don't be honest. I don't think it's a very useful scale because if you could harness, I mean, maybe up to the star. I think that maybe that's useful. But beyond that, that just sounds so fantastical that it's kind of really almost beyond the realms of even speculative fiction, So I don't know. Maybe you can take your sci-fi that. That's a bit too far for me, I think. But anyway, so going back to the beginning, the waffle. I mean, this isn't the topic of tonight anyway. But going back to the waffle at the beginning of this conversation is about the whole acting thing. Would I make a good Doctor Who? And I'm pretty sure I wouldn't actually, because I don't think I can act. Now I don't actually, and I don't know if there's any actors who join the stream, but I'd be interested to know. Acting itself, to me, is total witchcraft, because I look at a film and I see the actors doing their thing. And there's this sense that they aren't acting, okay? They're the people they happen to be, And I look at actors who can do that. They can swap into a different persona and they can act. Actually, genuinely can act, and they come across as somebody else. And that to me is witchcraft. It's magic, because when you watch a piece of acting. You watch it and you go, "Ooh, that's awful." They're not believable. But pinning down exactly what is different between what they're doing and what a really good actor is doing, to me, is something I look at it every single time and go, "What's actually wrong with this bad actor compared to the really good actor?" And I can't actually quantify what the difference is. I just know that this guy can act and this guy can't, and I'm always scratching my head. What is it that good actors have, or actresses? And I'm kind of using that as an inclusive term. That the bad actors don't. And then but you can instantly tell, right, when somebody can't act. It just doesn't come across properly. And I'm not talking about stupid errors like breaking the fourth wall or anything like that. There's just something either in the dialogue or the delivery or the mannerisms or whatever it is. Some people can act and some people can't. And I don't know if that's a skill you can actually learn, or whether it's something you sort of are born with and then can improve or not. I don't know. I'd like to know what people's opinions are, because I'm always, acting to me is witchcraft. I'm like, you can pick up a character from a page and suddenly there they are. I think that's absolutely magical. But that's a thing. Do we manage to recruit that actor from Dragon King? I haven't heard back from them since, so I don't know. I would watch Drew's Doctor. He's got this kind of bubbly spark of the Doctor in the hat. But that's probably all I've got going for me, I think. But I don't think I can. I don't think I can act. I'm pretty. I think I'd find that very difficult. So Nicholson is great. He's often large in life, but still believable. You've got a crystal ball, and that looks like witchcraft. Everybody acts. Actors just know that they do. Oh, now that's deep. Says the Blue Ganymede. That's very deep. Well, I suppose we kind of do, don't we? Because I'm actually, believe it or not, I'm naturally quite an introverted person. I don't actually like people very much. Which you present company accepted, of course. But I find social gatherings really hard work. I don't like them. If I could be doing something else, I would. Okay. I'd be much happier sitting on my own in a room with a cup of tea and a bag of Skittles and a book than I would be interacting with people face to face. I much prefer emails to phones, etc., etc. Text conversation I can handle, but But oddly enough, chattering away to you guys on this, I find quite therapeutic. So I don't know. I don't know what I am. I'm sort of a weird combination. And I suppose over the years I've taught myself to survive in what I think arguably is quite an extrovert-oriented world. It's the world isn't all that friendly to introverts. I find quite a lot of the time. So. Drew doesn't actually like people. That's going to make a great doctor. Yes, of course, you guys don't exist. You're just here. You're just bots for my entertainment, aren't you? You're just randomly programmed AI. I think of Capaldi's doctor. I don't think I'm a hugging person now. No, I see. That whole hugging thing. Yeah, that's not me at all. If I hug somebody, it has to be somebody I'm actually have a relationship with. Sort of random hugging of people I find very strange, but that's just me. And you're acting like Mad Monk says you're acting like people are listening to you. I suppose I am, yeah. So I don't know. That whole acting thing I think is Drew still thinks we are real people. It's an excellent matrix that I live in. I'm sure I can give you a hug, Gian. I'm not totally adverse to giving people hugs. It's just I find that. I mean, I would give a hug to a person who I knew who I hadn't seen for a long time, that I had some level of relationship with. The thing I find very odd is just hugging people that you've never met before. It just seems like a very intimate thing to do to somebody you've never met. But I'd say hello and I'd shake hands possibly, and hug really. I don't know. It just strikes me as odd. So there we go. So I'm an aloof sort of a distant sort of a person, I suppose, in some ways. But there we go. Okay, so Dr. Quest MD, now that is quite a good thing. We learn our mannerisms through observation and develop ourselves based on the input. Acting is the same thing in the condensed. So I suppose acting it's a profession, isn't it? It's something that, maybe you've got a natural talent at, but it's like anything else. If you want to get good at it, presumably you've got to work at it. So I can't, presumably I could go to acting school, I suppose, and learn some technicalities of the craft. And I don't know anything about it, so it's not something... not something that really appeals to me actually, but not something that I know anything about either. So I'm assuming it's a bit maybe like writing or playing a musical instrument or anything else that's actually a lot more complicated than it looks. In the sense that you can't suddenly decide, right, today I will be a brilliant actor. You just can't do that because there's a lot of work and a lot of craft that needs to be put in and a lot of practice. It's like anything. Today I will be a brilliant musician. No, you won't, because you've got to practice a lot in order to be a really, really good musician. And most things. I think there's something on the internet somewhere basically saying if you put 1,000 hours of effort into something, you'll probably be pretty reasonable at it. Whether that's driving a car or playing a musical instrument or something like that. If you put 1,000 hours of effort and practice and learning into it, you'll probably be reasonably good at it. And maybe acting is another thing that's just, you know, like learning a foreign language or something. You know, if you put the effort in, the time in, you'll be okay. So I don't know. It's, yeah. To be honest, acting is to me rather like that whole foreign language. I'm always stupendously impressed by people who can speak a foreign language, because I can't. Okay, I can only speak English with a tiny smattering of French words, plus the chance, you know. And I find that people who can speak another language, I find that an amazing ability, and I find acting an amazing ability. Whereas, you know, I can play, you know, if you hum a tune at me, I will be able to play it on a piano, you know, really quickly. I can play by ear, and other people find that amazing, and I go, well, it's just something I can do. I don't know how I do it. I can't really explain it. So, you know, it's you know, maybe that's just the wonder of the human kind of, you know, some people can do amazing stuff. So there we go. Drew, you create personas all the time for your books. Actors just know how to take that on and make it their own, I guess. Yeah, I suppose. I mean, creating characters. I suppose that's a good thought, actually. Creating characters. You know, I spend a lot of time thinking, what's it like to be that character? I suppose, and maybe acting takes that, you know, another step further. So I suppose that's good. Drew, say I an ass. You know that, Glenn. You know that British people can't say the word ass. It just we can't say it. So we have to say arse. There's no such thing as a foreign language. An illusion made up by our brains. Every language is a foreign to someone. Well, I suppose that's very true. Yeah. I just, you know, every language is a made-up construct, isn't it? It's just a way of, so, you know, why is any different to any other? I suppose it isn't in fundamental, but I just find that an amazing thing to do. Say it in a Texas accent. I can't do accents, okay, not very well. You actually say ass perfectly when you mean donkey. It's a long-standing thing, because you know, oddly enough, this came up quite a few times when we were doing 9 Streams of Consciousness, which is our insert opportunity for Glenn to plug the book again. When we did our anthology on Twitch a year and a bit ago, of course we had writers from different countries, and that meant that sometimes we did bump into kind of Anglo-American issues, in particular, in terms of what does this word mean? How do we spell this? Are we going to go for an English book, a British book, or an American book, or shall we stick to some sort of amalgam of British that kind of everybody finds acceptable, or English, you know, all that sort of stuff. Yeah, all that sort of stuff. And it was odd things that came up, and ass was one of them. You know, in America you can kick ass, okay? You can't do that in the UK because that means kick donkey. In the UK you have to kick arse, okay? You're going to kick your arse, which of course doesn't sound quite as good in dialogue as I'm going to kick your ass. So we had all these sort of problems. Yeah, okay, you can say that in America, you can't say that in the UK, and it's little international things like that gave us some flavour and some fun. But there we go. Open a can of whoop ass. Yeah, in the UK that just doesn't work. You can't say I'm going to open a can of whoop ass. Is kicking donkeys illegal in the UK? I don't know, but it's probably highly dangerous because donkeys can kick back. It's actually a pretty good American accent. Dear. And change the language based on that. So, I mean, those are things that, I mean, just on the serious writing, though, those are things that you do have to bear in mind. I was watching today a documentary, a National Geographic documentary on one of the American parks. I think Olympic Mountain, Mount Olympus or something in northwestern America. I don't know quite where it is, but anyway, it's quite interesting. You know, salmon and bears and stuff like this. And there was this phrase in the thing, and it completely jarred with me because I was like, what the hell does he mean? And you know, this bear was making a strange noise. You know, I don't know what bears do, but anyway, it was a big black bear and it was making a strange noise. And the narrator basically said, it's just his way of telling everyone he's in the hood. And I was like, telling him he's in the hood? What does that mean? was like, in the hood? What? He's not wearing a hood. What's he mean? And I was ruminating on this, and all the rest of the documentary is going on, right? And I'm sitting here going, he's in the hood. He's in the hood. What the hell does that mean? He's in the hood. And then suddenly I twigged. It was neighborhood. It's obviously a Americanism. To take the neighbor out of neighborhood and just say he's in the hood. I was like, why would you do that? It's like I miss all the detail about what this black bear was doing halfway up the mountain. I've completely forgotten that because I was fixated on what this problem with the word hood was. So some things don't travel. But there we go. I've come here to kick ass and drink tea, and I'm all out of tea, so I'm going to kick ass instead. Americans use the ass word for donkey too. Okay, but it seems reserved. It's funny that in the hood. So I had no idea what that was. There was a few other phrases that I was like, this has definitely been done for an American audience. I don't understand what they mean. Oh, it was something about the 46. There's another phrase, and it was something like, and this is the most northwesterly of the 46. And I was like, the 46 what? The 46th parallel? The 46th forest? The 46th mountain range? What? The 46th what? And then I presume, I don't know if it was 46, but then it was sort of assumed it was state. So it's like, stop doing things that are specific to American, you American documentary maker. This is coming to the worldwide audience. You're streaming to the world. You need to adapt. So I should give them some feedback, really, shouldn't I? Upper edge of the six. Yeah, so it was just very. I assume it's 46 states. Is that right, or was there 52 now? I get a bit confused. It's just assumed knowledge that presumably everybody in America knows what it is. We just outside the US, we just don't know what you're talking about. Isn't the hood some sort of rough area? There you go. Yeah. Anyway, never mind. But that would be 48. Or maybe it was 48. There we go. Okay, so 48. So it must have been. Yeah, we're at the top end of the 48, and I was like. Okay. That's like in the UK saying that's in the far northwest of the Shires. Everybody will understand that. Okay, there's been 50 since 59. Okay, or highway or interstate. Anyway, it was Mount Olympus, which I understand to be in the northwest of the. There's a national park there, which looks jolly nice on the documentary. That's all I'll say. So there we go. So just a note to National Geographic is they just need to bear in mind that people are watching their stuff, and genuinely it's actually mostly pretty good. Some of us are not in America and we don't understand what you're talking about. Which is good fun. Anyway, so that's enough waffle. Come on, look, it's 2037 and I haven't even got to the topic of the evening yet. So here we go. The Canadians separate us from Alaska. So people are shouting outside my house now. British people in the summer, wandering around in the dark, shouting at people. Is my hat pin a telescope? Yes, it is. There we go. That my hat pin is. That way. My hat pin is indeed a telescope. So yeah, there we go. It's not. It's not International Geographic. I suppose it isn't actually. This was on the Disney Channel, so I suppose that's fair comment actually. It's not International Geographic. It's National Geographic. But they do go out. I mean, National Geographic do go outside of America, right? Yeah, I'm sure I watched some stuff on the National Geographic channel that wasn't in America. Yeah, some space Brits. They were just know what they were doing, shouting outside. We have a pathway that runs around the back of the house here, which people occasionally do wander up and down. And occasionally, there is a pub about a mile away, and occasionally people wander back from the pub. But it's a bit early for people to be wandering back from the pub drunk at this time of night, so I'm not quite sure what that was. But there we go. International Geographic. I might suggest that to them. That's a good call. Anyway, so yeah, the topic of tonight was one that occurred to me over the weekend, actually. Something we haven't really covered now. It's potentially interesting ground, potentially slightly controversial, actually, because and it's a staple of some branches of fantasy and science fiction. It's a staple of some of them, and it is the concept of the afterlife. Okay. Now, some of us, me included, are quite possibly very, very staunch agnostics, okay? Don't really believe, but we are hedging our bets because, as somebody once said, I think an agnostic is an atheist who doesn't have the courage of his convictions, or something like that. And I'm not prepared to rule out the possibility of there not being anything beyond the material world that we see. But it is something that crops up in science fiction and fantasy quite frequently, the concept of, is there another existence beyond the one that we see? Now, we covered parallel universes last week, okay? Mad Monk Soft is just in case, so it's subscribing to, what is it, Pascal's wager. I think it's Pascal's wager. So, and that's more about the existence of God than it is about afterlife, but kind of God and gods and afterlives are kind of connected in some ways, aren't they? So it's going religious. Well, not really. We can have, there can be, it depends on what you mean by religious, really, doesn't it? Because sometimes you do need God in some belief systems to have an afterlife. And sometimes, in some religious areas that you don't need God to have an afterlife. You just sort of cycle around and things. So anyway, this probably will get a bit existential. So apologies for that in advance. But that's the topic of tonight. So Pascal's wager to start with. That's the old thing about whether or not you should believe in God. And Pascal basically, I can't remember which Pascal this was, but anyway, Pascal's wager is that you should definitely believe in God. Okay, regardless of any other evidence, yay or nay, it's sensible to believe in God. And the reason that Pascal came to this conclusion is basically says, if God exists, okay, if God does it, let's assume God exists, and I do believe in God, all good, all right, all good. If God exists and I don't believe in him, then I am at fault, and that could be problematic, all right? So there's a good and there's a bad. If God doesn't exist, right, and I believe in him, probably no harm done. If God doesn't exist and I don't believe in him, again, no harm done, right? So on the balance of probabilities, if I believe in God and he does exist, all good, really good. And if he doesn't exist and I believe in him, no harm done. If I don't believe in him and he doesn't exist, doesn't matter. If I don't believe in him and he doesn't exist, I'm in trouble. So it's logically correct to believe in God. That's Blaise Pascal's logic, okay? There we go. So Chris Viking, well, agnostic and atheist aren't mutually exclusive. I'm an agnostic atheist. I don't know if there are any deities and I don't believe in their existence. Okay. I haven't really thought about it in this depth. I'm quite satisfied personally, and I don't predicate anybody else's belief. You're entirely entitled to believe what you wish. I personally don't see there to be any need for any evidence around that justifies a belief in anything beyond the corporal existence that we have today. I personally think, alas for me, that when I die, I biologically come apart and disintegrate, and my component parts go off to be other things. That will be the end of Dru-ids, alas. That will be the end of my short period of existence in this wonderful universe that we find ourselves in. That's my personal view. I'm quite happy with that. I don't recall existing before I was born. I don't consider that I did. And I consider that after I die, then I also won't exist. And all you'll be left with is a few Twitch stream recordings on YouTube and some books, okay? And hopefully some good memories. So no, I'm not religious, all right? I don't see the need for it. Now, I'm quite happy with most scientific explanations of most things. I'm quite happy that we are ignorant of certain things and we don't understand certain things. That seems to make a lot of sense to me. But that view is shared by quite a few people I know, but an awful lot of people I know have very, very firm beliefs in a god, a deity, multiple deities, or a sort of outlook where the universe sort of recycles itself every so often. Things like I'm trying to get my religions right. Hinduism, I think, is multiple gods, isn't it? And Buddhism and things like that, different levels. Then you've got the kind of Judeo-Christeo Muslim type religions where you've got the single god, and you've got other belief systems where there were lots of gods and all sorts of things. But they all have, in some ways, a concept of an afterlife, and this is something that does pop back into science fiction every so often, and fantasy novels. You can, you have the concept of talking to people who have died, and summoning shades, or summoning necromancers who can call people back from the dead and reanimate corpses and things like that. So that's a staple of fantasy, in particular. Now in science fiction, it's more complicated. Sometimes the technology is able to recall people from a condition that we, in our less technological state perhaps now, would regard as dead, and then the whole definition of death becomes an interesting thing. Bilbo Gavin says he's thought of this quite a lot. Okay, so here we go. Even though the 11th hour loophole is considered ingenuine and therefore wouldn't work, just doing it. Yeah. So I think it's very unwise. Let's assume God does exist, it's very, very unwise to try and second guess an omnipotent being. He surely is going to have thought of there's going to be those guys who on their deathbed decide to convert. He said, no, I'm going to see that coming. So I don't, God, if he's any kind of, he's presumably is reasonably smart, is going to see that one coming. So I don't think the deathbed conversion is likely to win you any favours. So I don't know. But science fiction fantasy does delve into this topic. Is the concept of the essence of you, which we have discussed on the stream before, which is a very, very existential discussion, going on to some other place where your existence is either you exist in a different state, or you exist in another place, or you exist in another time, or something like that, is is a concept that pops up quite a lot, and we have an endless fascination with it. And I think some of that is cultural, because we've all been brought up with concepts of life after death, and even I find it quite odd, because I do look at things with a very atheistic view perspective, I suppose, and kind of I would call myself an agnostic, because I'm not entirely convinced that there isn't deities, because I can't prove it one way or the other. So as far as I'm concerned, the question is, well, maybe, but I see no evidence that they exist. But I'm not closed to the possibility that they might. I find, particularly when you get to significant events like the death of a family member, or the death of somebody close to you, or death of a friend suffers a loss of a family member or something like that. And I've been to funerals, depending on that person, sometimes it's, I've been to Christian funerals, I've been to Muslim funerals, I've been to Hindu funerals, and lots and lots of different religions doing different things to mark the passing. Now and I've been to humanist ones as well, each type of ceremony is very unique to the cultural situation it's in, and it seems. I can sit there with my logical kind of vaguely scientific hat on, going, well, as far as I'm concerned, they're gone. They no longer exist. That is just a body. Whatever that person was as an essence is no longer there. They don't exist anymore. That's it. And yet, other people clearly don't accept that viewpoint. They believe very firmly, and I can't argue with them. I have no evidence one way or the other that person has gone on to another plane of existence somewhere else, or has come back as somebody else, or and there's a circle of life thing going on, all those sort of things, and I sit there thinking these people genuinely believe this, and they are deriving therefore some comfort from the fact that whilst yes they can't talk to their friend, family member, etc. anymore on this plane, they look forward to a reunion with them when they move on past the end of life as it is here. Whereas I'm thinking, well, no, I'll be gone as well. So I can from a kind of I suppose slightly selfish perspective, I can see that actually that's quite a compelling thing to want to happen. If somebody has died and your belief system incorporates a mechanism where at some point in the future you'll be able to see them again and be reunited with them, I can see that being very, very attractive thing to want to believe. So that sort of thing. Reg W says, by definition, you can't really deceive an omnipotent being anyway. That's going to be pretty darn tricky, isn't it? And so there's science fiction dabbles around with this whole because the trick here is, do you have, and I think the fundamental thing is, do you have an essence of you that is something that survives the death of a body or not? Is there some it's been called soul or life force or all sorts of other names. So Bill McGavins, there's exactly the right quote. I say, I'm not sad that my friend is dead because I know he's in heaven, and I'm sad that I can't talk to him anymore. And there's that possibility of being reunited, which I can see is incredibly attractive. Particularly assuming you missed the dead relative. Sometimes it's like, thank God they've gone, but it's most of the time. Hopefully it's not that. And Glenn's point there, if the phrase "any sufficiently advanced technology is invisible from magic holds any truth, could an all-powerful God and afterlife seem like magic?" Well, I suppose it could, because if you can be, if technology can trick you into believing you're in another realm or another condition, then is there actually a difference? Are you in an afterlife and the advanced alien creature is a god? How advanced would a god have to be a god, as far as we're concerned? What powers would they possess? The powers that we have as just ordinary human beings, transport that back 2,000 years. We'd be gods, wouldn't we? We'd be unassailably powerful. Electricity, cars, transport, explosives, lights, radio communication, all those things. As far as civilizations not that long ago would be concerned, we would be gods. We would have that sort of power. What would a god? If we were to define a god in 21st century terms, how powerful would they need to be in order for us to be, yep, okay, that's definitely God, all right? And I'm thinking, in 21st century terms, we'd need to be able to, a god would be, and I'm oddly enough, I'm thinking now of things like the Avengers, oddly enough, which is stuff that I've watched. The Avengers can. If we take Thanos, dear old Thanos, he can make people disappear with an Infinity Stone. That's pretty godlike. Okay, if you can grant powers and remove powers and destroy planets and rearrange star systems and stuff like that, that's pretty godlike. So how advanced technically? Let's assume you can actually do those things with technology. Does that make you a god? What's the definition? Does God have to be beyond material nature I tend to get the impression from most religions that gods or gods are in some way a spiritual being that is beyond the material world in which we can perceive. So we can't perceive God directly. We can only perceive God by the actions that God takes, or some sort of communication from that God, which is a bit nebulous. So I don't know, but that could be technology. How advanced would you have to be to actually be a god by the nature of certain time zone? So Commander M there, any sufficiently distant time traveler is indistinguishable from a god. That's right. So Star Trek original. So that's right. Star Trek's covered this one a number of times. Star Trek, the original episode where Kirk is considered the god in America of native culture. It turns out he can bleed, and that causes a problem. There was that Who Mourns for Adonis, wasn't it, where an alien race visited Earth and basically generated the Greek myths, the Lords of Olympus, all that sort of stuff. And it turned out they were aliens who were just effectively mucking around with holograms and stuff. But it was pretty impressive. So that so that sort of thing is again, is science fiction jumping into that sort of space and saying, okay, gods can be explained by technology. There's the thing. And then there's the whole sort of paranormal side of the world. God got too busy designing fields. Lovely wiggly outlines, yeah. This line of thinking, the high tech of being considered God is the basic ancient alien. So that's another thing. We were able to build the pyramids because the aliens told us how to do it. That sort of stuff. So technology is one way of looking at it. But the afterlife, because you do have people. You do have people. On record who have near-death experiences, and they do seem to share that sort of commonality of moving towards a light, and there being this kind of euphoria of being in a cleansing, wonderful, awe-inspiring sort of place. And when people come back from it, there's almost that sense of loss, that they've been close to something very kind of enrapturing, and then they've had to come back to the boring, normal plane of existence where we all live. Now, is that actually a genuine experience in the sense that they actually did get close to something that's actually there, or is that a product of the brain being maybe starved of oxygen and getting close to being damaged and dying? I don't know. All those sort of things I think are quite interesting, and it's definitely an area where science fiction and fantasy kind of pokes around with things, and fantasy in particular. Erasing, one of my favourite ones that does it is the Sword of Shannara. Dear old Terry Brooks, where he will bring up the shade of a character from sometimes from a previous book actually. So you knew the character in a previous book, who then died, and in a subsequent book you can raise the shade of the character from the earlier book and ask it for advice. I know you're dead. Sorry to bother you, but we've got this issue. We could really do with some advice. And of course, dead characters that come, are brought back from wherever they go. Okay, when you die, and that depends again on the sci-fi environment or the fantasy environment or the influence of religion on the thing. Is these sort of shades of dead people that generally, from my experience reading these things, tend to be quite reluctant to have been brought back. They don't seem very happy about that scenario, and the advice they give is always very cryptic and not very useful. It seems to be when you die, you become cryptic and not very useful when you're brought back. And the film Flatliners explores so that's a good film. That's a good film. So that's quite good. And the Alien series. So are we? Where do we come from? Are we seeded by a previous? But the trouble is, that only moves the problem back one, doesn't it? If humans were seeded by aliens, fine, okay, but where do they come from? So there's all that sort of stuff. And Spock goes, and science fiction, that's right, Spock goes into McCoy's brain. So Spock has, and that's very metaphysical, isn't it? It's Star Trek there. Spock's Katra, I think it's called, is Spock's essence. And so Spock actually dies. He does the mind, my thoughts to your thoughts sort of thing. Gives McCoy something, his Catra, his essence, which sends McCoy slightly doolally for most of the film, doesn't it? And then at the end of the search for Spock, they're able to transfer the essence of Spock from McCoy's mind back into Spock, who's been resurrected by the Genesis device. And Spock kind of comes up and goes, "You have and you always shall be my friend. Everything's great." And Spock's back to normal within an episode or two. And it's like, okay, so in Star Trek, therefore, at least with the Vulcans, there's this concept that the Vulcans have a transferable soul that you can effectively move. They can take the essence out of themselves. Now, the interesting thing there is that Spock did that to McCoy, and then went obviously into the radioactive tube inside the Enterprise to fix the warp drive so they could escape from Khan. So whatever Spock transferred to McCoy wasn't his entire essence, otherwise Spock presumably wouldn't have been able to function, right? Spock was able to function. So was what he gave to McCoy a sort of copy, i.e. a backup of his soul, because he knew he was going to die. So all the experiences Spock had after he gave his Catra to McCoy presumably were lost as far as Spock was concerned, because when his Catra was restored back into his body in the next film, that would have been before he... So I don't know if Star Trek ever covered that particular problem. That's the sort of stuff that I start thinking about as a sci-fi writer. So remember, exactly, there we go, remember. So lots of people in the French TV series Les Revenants returned. Children killed in a bus crash return but don't know that they died. Yeah, so there's some quite spooky sort of stuff when people have died but then their soul is still sort of hanging about in some sort of weird way and doesn't realise they've died. That happens quite... I mean, even the film Ghost, isn't it? Which isn't really science fiction. I suppose it's kind of fantasy, isn't it? The guy dies, and then in the Ghost film, you just get up and you just keep acting as normal until you realise, something causes you to realise that actually you can no longer interact with anybody, nobody can hear you, and you can kind of run through objects because you're a ghost. That sort of idea that you become a ghost is a bit of a weird one. Now, ghosts, I again personally don't believe in ghosts. I don't see how that's possible, but plenty of people do. And I don't know. Actually, I must admit I haven't really looked at this. I don't know how ghosts fit in with most religions, actually, because ghosts and things like that tend to, they're sort of paranormal activity, aren't they? I don't know. Do most? I don't know how many people on here kind of are religious or anything like that. And again, you're very, very welcome. I don't judge anybody by what they believe. You're entitled to believe entirely what you want. I'm no judge of what's right or wrong on these sort of things. And you are entirely 100% entitled to believe whatever you want to believe, with no criticism from me. Well, I'm interested to know, actually, because do ghosts feature in religion? Do religious texts have anything to say about ghosts at all? Because I kind of assume that they kind of would, but I'm not sure if they do. So Commander O'Connor's actually gone through one of the things. Ghosts can go through walls, but they never fall through the floors. That's very, very strange. As well, I suppose there's a Holy Ghost, yes, but that's not quite what we're talking about. The Holy Ghost is, as I understand, and I might be a bit rusty on this, so anybody who is a Christian who, and I get the facts wrong, then apologies, but as I understand it, the Holy Ghost is a third part of a Trinity of God, who's sort of the manifestation of Jesus on the earth now that Jesus has gone back to heaven. Is that right? I'm not sure. I might be completely off base there, but the Holy Ghost isn't what I'm thinking of. I'm thinking of ghosts of people, so haunted house type stuff, whereby somebody, and usually ghosts tend to, at least in the stories, tend to be people that something bad's happened to them when they've died, and their ghost is sort of stuck in some sort of calamity as a result. It's like a soul or something that hasn't been put to rest because of the tragic event that happened to them. So ghosts tend to be upset. As far as I can work out. GL99 says, I don't believe in ghosts, but I have had a very strange experience to do with them. When I was a child, a family friend had lost their husband, called us round to her house because her late husband's portrait had appeared in a glass pane of her back door. I saw it and it looked like one of those laser etchings, and it was slowly starting to fade away in parts. Wow, okay, so that's... So this sort of stuff, I completely accept that you saw what you saw. I have no explanation for it, and I can't dismiss it if you say you saw it. So, so that's fascinating that weird stuff happens, and I get that weird stuff happens. Now, I happen to live literally about 4 miles away from the most haunted village in the UK, which has the unlikely name of Pluckley. And it's on record. It's the most haunted village in the whole of the United Kingdom. I don't know particularly why the ghosts would congregate in Pluckley, and I've been through Pluckley many times and I've never seen a ghost, but apparently it is the most haunted village in the United Kingdom. There are certain congregations of reports on things like this. Chat's moving really fast. There's a precedent in the Bible about a ghost where Saul asks a witch to summon the spirit of the prophet Samuel, and it seems he does come back. Okay, so that's interesting. So that's okay. Wow. Okay, but in general, I think ghosts are not really part of a Christian view of things. I must say, I've not come across it. Good evening, freaky deaky do. Good evening, Drew. I'm a bit late, but what's the topic? We're sort of discussing the afterlife and whether or not ghosts and things exist, and stuff that shows up in science fiction and fantasy as a result of those two topics. Dr. Question, in Christianity at least, the concept of ghosts doesn't work for the normal person. We are the bottom of the power scale. Either we get sent up or down and do not remember those living, though the living can remember the dead. Okay, so that makes sort of sense. And Glenn says Jesus is said to have a resurrection body that was tangible and physical, but it was also pop into rooms. Yeah, so he appeared and disappeared after the resurrection, didn't he? But it was physical, but not the same. So that's a bit weird. The question, freaky deaky dude, is there an afterlife? Well, that's of course the question that we certainly won't answer this evening. But we're sort of discussing the use of afterlives or the afterlife in fantasy and science fiction stories, and how people have explored those sort of things within the science fiction and fantasy concept. Some people say that cats and dogs can sense ghosts. Yes, I've heard that too, that occasionally cats and dogs will just sort of stare at something which appears not to be there, and are they actually looking at something that actually they can perceive that we can't, or are they just staring into space for no obvious reason? Now, I do have a cat and a dog, as you know, and my cat can stare into space literally for a long time, and you can wave your fingers in front of her eyes and she won't react. So I'm guessing in my cat's case it's not particularly sensitive to anything, so I don't know. So 1 Samuel chapter 28 is where I'm going to have to read that because I don't think I read that bit of the Bible. So cats just do some. I think cats mostly do weird stuff just to freak us out, to be honest. I think that's just cats. So Alan says, when the disciples saw the risen Jesus, they were afraid because they thought he was a ghost. Okay, so the concept of ghosts is around. But I'm thinking of a ghost where somebody is murdered in a horrible way, and then they kind of hang around. The ghost sort of hangs around in the house or the scene of the murder, and effectively haunts that place. And it's like they are sort of stuck between realities, maybe. There's various thing, and we kind of touched on it with parallel universes and things and different dimensions last week, is that, are there separate planes of existence, and could separate planes of existence be our hells and our heavens and our purgatories and our Valhallas and all their various other different kind of environments that we've created in religion to accommodate because that's one thing. Again, that's one thing that and it's very, very irreligious of me to be thinking this, particularly when I go to funerals, because when you go to a funeral now, as I understand, most of the funerals I've been to are Christian, because most of the people I know who die are kind of in the Church of England, and that's just the culture I've grown up in. Now, as I understand it, I kind of assume when I was young that your chances of going to heaven or hell, because there's kind of two destinations with Christianity really, is that I kind of figured out that if you had basically done mostly good stuff in your life, then you probably went to heaven, and if you'd done mostly bad stuff in your life, and there seemed to be a sliding scale of bad stuff from pinching a few sweets from the tuck shop, probably not enough to get you to hell. But if you go around murdering people and pulling legs off spiders and stuff like that, then there's a bigger chance of you going to hell. But I've never been to a funeral of anybody, even some who potentially weren't all that nice people, where the chap at the front has gone, yeah, he's in hell. It's just not something that gets said, is it? Dearly beloved, exactly. There's always an assumption on every single funeral that I've been to that the person who's died has gone to heaven, which I would on a strict level of averages, I would kind of expect some of them at least to not have made the mark. I don't know. But then as I understand Christianity a bit better, I understand that actually it's not what you do in Christianity. It's not the good deeds and the bad deeds that get you to heaven. It's believing in the resurrection power of Jesus Christ. You have to believe that Jesus Christ died for your sins, and if you don't believe in Jesus Christ, then you're not going to heaven at all. It's not a case of good or bad deeds. It's a case of belief and faith. And I'm pretty sure that quite a lot of the funerals I've been to, the said person who's just died didn't believe in Jesus, and therefore, by that definition, has not gone to heaven. But nobody ever mentions this during the funeral, which is, I suppose, quite a difficult thing to touch upon. But yeah, there's that bit in my brain going back. Okay, so I don't know. That always leaves me with a little bit of, and I would never voice it because it's not, it's not the appropriate thing to do at a funeral. But I don't know. I just find that rather peculiar. Another line between fantasy and science fiction is a very one, but are ghosts and the afterlife really much more than fantasy? Well, you see, what we've kind of discussed in the past, is whether or not things like that are actually technological, or whether or not there is a way to access those places through travel of some kind, whether it's a spaceship or a time machine or something else. Could you get into heaven using technology? If heaven is actually genuinely a place that you can get to by some process, in this case dying and going to heaven, could there be a technological way to get there? I don't know. So I've got to go back to the chat. Piers Anthony discussed this in his Incarnation books. I haven't read those for a long time. I need to go and have a look at that. But the Bible does acknowledge widespread fears and beliefs of the occult, but they pretty clearly define that all of it was work of angels or demons. Okay, so there's another thing we should probably discuss as well: angels and demons, because they show up in fantasy quite a lot too. And everything else was a con or a vision, but not actually happening. Okay, so that is spiritual powers effectively messing about with us humans, conning us into not believing in the right things, I guess. Commander O'Connor, and yet if you confess your sins on your deathbed, you're forgiven and go to heaven. Not a bad deal for Catholics. As a ghost in more evangelical, even Roman Catholic circles, ghosts are connected with deceptions of the devil. Okay, that kind of makes sense. It's ways of explaining things, isn't it? And there's an intermediary before you go to heaven. Unless you're a saint, you go to purgatory first. So purgatory seems to be one of those things that is not specific to, or at least some branches of Christianity don't seem to mention it. I think purgatory seems to be a more Catholic thing rather than a Protestant thing. I don't really know. I'm out of my out of my knowledge area. I don't really know. So I don't know. Chris Viking. I mean, I've rarely ever run into it in science fiction, but in fantasy, I constantly run into shamans communing with the dead. The Valley of Shale in the Shannara book. I mentioned that. That's it. The Valley of Shale. That was it. And you can talk to. There's a lake where you can talk to the spirits of dead Druids. So that the idea of consulting with the dead people comes up, and the idea, I suppose, that dead people have some insight, almost if they're now in an omnipotent place where they can see everything and therefore can give you some advice that's useful. I don't know. Alan RP said, you can go through your life doing good and bad, but you can't force yourself to believe something. No, that's right. An interesting story comes. Somebody breaks into heaven via technology instead of the proper way. Yeah, that could be quite an interesting story, couldn't it? It's like presumably the type of people who normally would get into heaven are kind of the good guys, you gate crash heaven and actually you're a slightly disreputable character. That could be quite amusing. If you want angels and demons, watch Lucifer. Yeah, Rob's 2610. Lucifer is definitely one of my favourite TV shows. I really enjoyed that. So I think purgatory is Catholic. Yeah, I'm definitely pretty sure purgatory is a Catholic only doctrine. I'm pretty sure. I mean, I've got a few friends who are in the sort of Protestant and straight evangelical world, and I've never heard them talk about purgatory. It's one or the other, heaven or hell. That's it. Okay, so purgatory is basically a Catholic thing. I think. Okay, that's interesting. Lucifer was great fun as a show, but it really doesn't reflect Judeo-Christian concept of those beings at all. No, it doesn't, does it? It's got nothing to do with Christianity as far as I can work out. So purgatory was invented when people were upset that unbaptized. You don't. I mean, clearly you don't want to go to hell, and you wouldn't want anybody to go to hell, would you? I mean, it doesn't sound like a great place. I mean, it's not really very clearly described, but it's sort of presumably all the scenes of fire, things being burnt, and I think in the Bible, if I'm right, it's just wailing and gnashing of teeth. I think that's basically pretty much what. I'm not quite sure where the 9 circles of hell or 7 circles? I'm not quite sure where that comes from. There's lots of descriptions of hell which have come from various sources, and it's just basically it doesn't sound like a place that you really want to go to. There's plenty of sci-fi stories of people using technology to break into hell as well. That's true. Yeah. Doom is a good one. So they open a portal to hell, don't they? And stuff comes out of it, which is a very, very bad thing to do. So Big Boy Gavin says, I originally had ghosts in my lore verse, but chucked the idea. And now ghosts show up quite a bit in fantasy. I mean, even Tolkien had ghosts. It's 9 circles of hell, is it? The idea of the ghosts that Aragorn summoned. They're not kind of not ghosts, but I suppose they are really, aren't they? The ones that are in the mountain of the dead. And they have to go underground. He summons them back to fulfill the oath of his Isildur's oath, I think it is, isn't it? Isildur. And they can't rest until their oath is fulfilled, and then Aragorn at the end will hold their oath fulfilled, and they sort of evaporate in a kind of quite nice way. Having a supernatural ghost army, it's a really handy thing to have in a pinch. So there are a lot of things like that in fantasy. Now, what are those guys? That's an interesting backstory there that I would like to know more about. So in that case, these guys, Isildur himself, they swore an oath to Isildur, and they broke that oath. So when they died, they didn't go to wherever they were supposed to go. Now, I think in Middle Earth, when you die, the elves never die. They go across the sea, don't they? whereas humans go somewhere else when they die. But these guys, for whatever reason, because they broke their oath, they didn't go there, and they were sort of stuck in this sort of limbo arrangement where they're just stuck underneath the mountain in a sort of non-corporeal state for a long, long time until Aragorn turns up several, I don't know how many hundreds of years later it is, and then sets them free. So Isildur actually cursed them, did he? I can't remember. I don't think I've ever read the original setup that. So that's quite an interesting concept, that you can be cursed to become a ghost when you die. Now the only thing I never understood about that is that if I was a cursed oath breaker and I'd become a ghost and I'd been stuck in a mountain for several hundred years being a ghost, and a guy turned up waving a suspiciously shiny sword going, I can release you from your purgatory or your state of being ghostly, just to do one thing for me and it'll all be good and I'll let you go and I will hold your oath fulfilled, what say you? My reaction as a ghost in that situation would be, yeah, let's give this guy a go. It can't be worse than being a ghost, right? And yet no, the ghosts are really reluctant. It's like, why are the ghosts reluctant? I would be going, yeah, thank God, last. And here's come along and release us from this ridiculous oath that we've been stuck on. So I don't quite get that one. Bilbo and Gandalf go with the elves. Oh yeah, they do, don't they? They go. Yeah, I don't know where the dwarves go. I forget where the dwarves go. I think isn't it Manwë or something? Who made the dwarves? I can't remember my Tolkien lore. The elves go wet. No, I think they go west. Okay, the most common symbol of the main species is deep scarlet red F. What are we talking about here? I missed a bit of text there. Okay, so which tell me best being trapped in the mountain as a ghost tends to make one grumpy, yes. Probably would, wouldn't it? But then Gandalf comforts one of the hobbits. He does. Now this is a good one, J.R. Knight. You're quite right. Gandalf comforts one of the hobbits in Minas Tirith by telling them about the afterlife, where there's that, white sands and a swift sunrise and all that sort of stuff. And because he's been there, hasn't he? Because he was Gandalf the Grey. Then he dies, goes to the Middle Earth version of heaven. There's bright lights and shiny things and white sands and nice sunrise and stuff, and then comes back having seen it, to complete his task. And so he's telling the hobbits where they go. So yeah, otherwise that's a bit me, isn't it? There is this really, really cool place you go to when you die. Oh, but you're a hobbit, aren't you? Sorry, no, you don't go there. Halls of Mandos. Okay, I it's all complicated stuff, and it's it's obviously Tolkien is made up, right? Okay, so it's not real. Okay, sorry, spoilers, everybody. I was in the second part of the message I sent. Sorry, Bill Gamo. The text was too long. I originally had ghosts. Oh, you had ghosts in your own lore verse, right? Okay. Okay, so that's interesting. So yeah, so I must admit I've never played around with ghosts. The only thing I did do, because I felt it made a better ending for the, and this is actually that's a spoiler, so I can't actually thinking about it, I can't talk about it. At the end of Shadewood, there is a concept of an afterlife in there. Now, Shadewood has been very scientifically rigorous throughout, and I haven't got people summoning people back from the dead or anything like that at all in Shadewood. There's just a small section at the end where I do reference something that could be construed as an afterlife. And it's up to you as the reader to interpret it. But anyway, that's spoilers, so I can't go there. So I have, in a very small way, thought about it. West, I always knew that Ireland was close to heaven as you could get. That's right. It pretty much is. Chris Viking, in the fantasy I'm working on right now, I've created religions, but I've not decided whether the gods are real or whether magic is real. I'm not entirely clear whether I'm going to make it. Well, I think that's a good thing. So now I did this with Shadewood, so again, minor spoilers, but I think most of you have at least read Shadewood 1 by now. I've got these priestesses who believe in the sun, the star overhead, is their god. That's what they believe. They're goddess, actually, rather than god, because they're a matriarchy. They see everything in terms of a matriarchy, so it's not a god, it's a goddess. and that that gives a figure. Now as the story opens, they are priestesses. They believe in a goddess, and that's how you start. Now that unravels a bit as the book go on, and you find out there's a bit more kind of political intrigue going on there than actual just a plain religion, which is my experience of most religions personally. So I tend to reflect that in my works as an author. Freaky ticketed spoilers, fingers in my ear, la 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 la. Yeah. So no. I won't do the spoilers, but there are there are priestesses in Shadewood, and they believe in a goddess, and their goddess is the star. Okay, that's how that goes. I'm still having to spoil my own stuff, and I am working on Shadewood 4 to make sure it's out for Audible as fast as possible. So I don't know. I'm not sure that scene in the movie is actually that way in the book. It's not. No, I've looked this up, Glenn. The Tolkien thing. Gandalf doesn't say that there. He does say it somewhere else, though. It is literally word for word. I can't remember where in the books Gandalf says it, but he does say it. He just doesn't say it in the Battle of Minas Tirith. So that's interesting. But it is a quote. It's lifted directly from the original text. Rob's 2610 says, nicely done at the end of Shadewood Truth. There we go. Thumbs up there. And those of you who haven't read it yet, well, sorry. Here we go. We can't talk about it. La la la, says Rich W. Rob's 260. Your Narina reminded me of Palpatine. She did get a little bit carried away. Well, it's early on, so I'm going to say I'm kind of okay with it. Not mean like 2 weeks ago or something when it was all full on spoiler talk. So no, I won't give spoilers for the whole thing. But no, there are I've had religions in my books, and generally I've sort of those religions have been for many people taking part in them. They're completely. They're completely paid up adherents to the religion. They believe it entirely. Whether the religion itself is actually genuinely true in that universe is a different kettle of fish. In some cases, yes, it is. I.e., I've made a universe where there are gods and goddesses and things. In other times, it's a fictional belief that somebody started for various reasons, and some people actually genuinely believe it, but it's not actually true. So. Those are different versions of religions that I've instantiated in my works. There we go. Pippin, I didn't think it would end this way. Gandalf end. So there we go. White shores and beyond, the far green country and the swift sunrise. That's it. So when is that Mad Monks off? Where in the books does that take place? Because that's the scene that happens with them in Minas Tirith in the movies, but it's not there, as I believe, in the book. So tell us where that actually happens. That would be quite interesting. Trying to keep up with the chat. So it's an interesting topic, isn't it? It's an interesting topic because there's a lot of obsession with it in fantasy in particular, but even science fiction dabbles with it quite a bit. Star Trek dabbles with it. You've got Star Wars. I mean, I know Star Wars is kind of not science fiction, but it kind of is, you know what I mean? Where do you put Star Wars on the science fiction fantasy line? It's somewhere in the middle there, isn't it? But there's Force ghosts, okay, and that's got to have some conversations about it, okay. So under what? Because it seems to be only the Jedi who become Force ghosts, presumably because they have to be strong with the Force before they die in order to continue on in that sort of thing. Now, so being a Force ghost doesn't seem to be a great job. Okay, so you can kind of only appear at certain places, and it appears that you only are able to appear to other Jedi, which doesn't give you many options. But you have you're effectively a useful ghost, aren't you? You can sort of appear, give some again slightly nebulous advice, and then you vanish again. And I don't know if it's ever explained. I don't know enough about the Star Wars universe. What do Force ghosts do when they're not appearing to other Jedi's and giving out advice? Yeah, are they hanging around in an afterlife somewhere? They, what are they? What are they doing? Where do they go? What's their purpose? Are they switched off in some fashion? All these sort of questions come out of the fact that suddenly there are Force ghosts. It's when Frodo goes west with Gandalf and the ship from the Grey Havens. Okay, so it's actually much later in the book. That's interesting. There we go. Okay, so that's interesting. And the best bit about Force Ghosts is that Qui-Gon Jinn apparently figured out how to do it after he died. That's right. Yes, that's right. So in Star Wars, the Force Ghost usually only appears to the Force-sensitive people that they have a connection to. Okay, so is the Force Ghost actually the person who died, or is it a sort of vision of the person who's died created by the person who remembers them? Question. I don't know. And the games of Star Wars had Sith ghosts that could possess. So I mean, again, lore is one of these mutable things, isn't it? Okay, so Frodo and Bill were going to the underlying lands at the very end. Yep. Hold on, I've got to help another Jedi by saying some generic Force wisdom here. So it is the person. Okay, so that's interesting. Okay, so that means that person is hanging around somewhere, waiting to be summoned. Hang on. Luke's got to that point in his journey where I need to drop in on him and give him some advice. Excuse me for a moment, says Obi-Wan Kenobi. Okay, so in the prequel series, it is established that it is a person. So where are they? Where do they go? Okay, so if you as a Jedi Master, you know how to become a Force ghost when you die. Presumably you've prepared yourself in some, arcane fashion. Where are you when you die? Are you somewhere? Are you in a Force place? Question. So those are sort of things. So those are things you can explore. In Fantasy Comp. Now, in our reality, lots of people believe in heaven and hell. People believed in Valhalla and Hades, of course, is the old word for hell. Now, Hades is not quite the same as hell. Hell seems to be a place of punishment, and heaven seems to be a place of kind of, I don't know really. What's heaven like? I mean, it's heaven to me actually. Sorry to say, doesn't sound very appealing. I did have a Christian friend, bless her, who is very evangelical, and she said, "Well, heaven is basically praising God for all eternity." And I said to her, said, praising God for all eternity. What like singing or what? Yeah. She said, lots of singing. It's like a big concert. That's like, okay. And I was sort of like, I think I'd get bored of that after a while. Maybe an hour or two I could stop it being. What else is there to do in heaven? It's just praising God for all eternity. So, count me out now. I don't want to do that. What's hell like? Well, that's just eternal punishment. No, I don't fancy that either. Are they the only two things on offer? I was being a bit flippant, which she took with very good grace, to be fair. But I just find the definitions of heaven and hell very limiting. I want to ask questions like: is there a go-kart track? Is there skiing? Do Skittles exist in heaven? Things like this. Do they have cheeseburgers? These are important things, as far as I'm concerned. Not sure. Apparently, God is really into the sound of music, but all the classical composers. There's a lot of questions that need to be answered about these afterlife places. I think. Do they have race cars in heaven? I kind of think of heaven should be because it's kind of sometimes it's sort of portrayed as a reward for doing good things in this life. Sometimes it's portrayed as you're just in the presence of God, and that's a good thing by definition because God's jolly nice. And it's ultimately fulfilling. I don't know. I'm not sure. Both, in the traditional description of hell and heaven, neither of them appeal to me, to be honest. Do they have Golf GTIs in heaven? This is questions that I think do need to be answered. Someone just wants his 90 Vestal Virgin. Yeah, yeah. I mean, the problem with that, of course, is they also have to be in heaven as well. Is there 80s music in Vital? This is really important stuff. Yeah, because okay. So you're gonna, I'm thinking of pros and cons here. Okay, yeah, no, we've only got harp music in heaven. Ah, darn. Down in hell they've got 80s ballads and rock and roll. So I'm kind of leaning towards that. They've got heavy metal down in hell. Is there any heavy metal up in heaven? Not really. No, we don't kind of go in for that sort of. Okay. Heaven is a place where nothing really happens. So yeah, unless you believe Belinda Carlisle, of course, in which case heaven is a place on earth. But I don't know. So and it's interesting. I suppose culturally, our perceptions of heaven and hell have probably been shaped by the fears and concerns of cultures that are now historic to us, right? So I've kind of always assumed that hell is kind of doom, gloom, eternal punishment, fire, brimstone, and gnashing of teeth and all that sort of stuff, to basically scare people into compliance. That's what I've always kind of, maybe slightly cynically, assumed that religion was for. It was a mechanism to control people and basically say, right, do good stuff, work hard, don't be bad, do what your parents tell you, do what the government tells you, do what the leaders of the pious people tell you, do what you're supposed to do, and you'll go to heaven. All your rewards will be in some amazing life, and you'll get to live forever in the presence of God, and everything will be peachy. But if you don't, if you misbehave, if you're bad and you don't work hard, if you don't do the right things, now eternal punishment with flames and fire and brimstone. That's kind of how I personally have always seen religion. It's basically pie in the sky if you die, and eternal punishment if you don't toe the path, like in this life. Okay, and the assumption has always been that there is another life that you are either going to go into hell or you're not. That's how I've always seen that. That may be a bit cynical, and I'm quite happy to be challenged on that. But that's how I've always seen it, and that's how I tend to write religions in my stories. There's a sense of they're there to manipulate people, and whether that's culturally because you've grown up in that culture, or whether or not that's the society in which you live, and therefore that's the wider culture or the local culture. It's a control mechanism. That's how I've always seen it. Now that may be unfair, and I know a lot of religious people who are jolly nice and would never seek to control people, and I think that's entirely compatible. But in terms of the way that the whole religious system works, it feels to me that it's in that sort of space. So I don't know. That's my view. I'm not saying that's right or that's wrong, so religions mostly give people purpose with a side or keeping order. So I think there's definitely a thing about that, and keeping order and giving people a sense of purpose, because there is an issue, and I personally don't have this as an issue. That people need to know, well, why am I here? And we've discussed this before on the stream. Why do I exist? Why am I here? What is my purpose in life? Now, personally, speaking entirely for 100% just for myself, I'm quite happy that I have no particular purpose whatsoever. I'm quite happy that it's just a complete random chance that I exist. And I happen to be here talking to you on the Twitch stream. There is no purpose to this. It's just something that I happen to be doing right now. It doesn't mean anything. There's no greater fundamental truth to be discovered. I just exist for a few decades, and then Dru-ids becomes the background particles of the universe once more, and that's it. I'm perfectly satisfied with the fact that my life has virtually no meaning in the grand scheme of the entire universe, because it's clear to me that I am insignificantly minute in that entire sphere. Now, that's me. Now, I get that some people can't actually cope with that. That they have there must be some meaning to my existence. I must be here for a reason. I must be special in some capacity. And a lot of religions will tell you that God has specifically created you, and you have a purpose and you have a reason for existing, and then there is meaning and importance associated with the fact that you exist. A lot of religions will tell you that, and that that's quite seductive. I'm actually important. I have relevance. I have meaning. I'm here because God expects me to do something. I have a task. I have a quest. I have something that I need to do to fulfill my potential. I can understand that being very, very compelling. I personally don't believe it. I think that's wishful thinking, but I can understand why people want to believe it. Maybe in 1,000 years, Drew goes, yeah, someone's going to reincarnate me and go, you know what, you were wrong. I've just reincarnated you to tell you that. And the funny thing was, of course, if there is an afterlife and I end up meeting God or whoever it is that's gatekeeper, they're going to go, that Twitch stream you did, total rubbish, Drew. Here you are in front of the afterlife. Could you just do a broadcast for us now, just to everybody, just say no, I was entirely wrong. I don't know. I don't see how people need to believe in God. No, I mean, I think you can be a moral person. I think you can be a nice person. I think you can have respect for other people and animals in your environment and everything else without needing to believe in God. I don't see that you need to believe in God or even be religious to be in a well, I suppose compassionate. Good is a difficult word to describe, but compassionate, loving, considerate, all those sort of things. I think those are personal choices. I don't know. J988. Interesting enough, Terry Pratchett calculated the internal volume of heaven based on the measurements of the New Jerusalem in Revelation. Turns out there's enough space for every human that's ever lived. Okay, so there's plenty of space for us all. That's good. And Alan RP30 in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, the total reflectivity vortex. Oh yeah, the total perspective vortex. That's right. It shows your insignificance by using a piece of fairy cake, doesn't it? It's almost virtually nothing except the Zaphod Beaver book. Well, if there's a multiverse, at least one of you will get into heaven regardless. Yes, actually, that's an interesting one. If the multiverse is true, then there's going to be various incarnations of me, some of which do get to heaven and some of which don't. So, I'm okay, generally. I don't know. It's a very good... Dr. Quest Emily, I don't need the threat of eternal damnation to know that I should say thank you. I agree, So Karumba there is basically saying, I agree on your outlook, which is why I would call myself a humanist. I would have leanings towards deism. I can accept that there potentially is a power behind the universe. Whether that power is actually interested in me as an individual, or even humanity, or even an individual planet, or even an individual galaxy, I'm not convinced. But I can potentially accept that there is some sort of all-encompassing force, power behind the universe. Whether that's a sentient thing, has purpose, I really don't know. But I think the jury's out on that sort of thing. So I don't know. So it's all very complicated, isn't it? But I think what's interesting about this is because it's such a fundamental thing for us. It's interesting as a society, even if you go back to primitive cultures, one thing that's always separated us from the animal kingdom is that we began fairly early on in our history to, treat the deceased with some sort of reverence. We didn't, it's just, whereas animals don't, okay, when things die, they're just dead. Whereas we've, possibly as a result of our intelligence and sentience and sapience, have constructed, let's not say they're not true because I can't prove anything. But we've built these elaborate constructs around the concept, the possibility of death becoming a gateway, a doorway to something else that it's a journey that all of us will have to take at some point in the future. And some of them, like me, believe it's the end, and some of people don't. They believe that's the next step. So I don't know. So what have we learned? I don't know. As usual on these themes, I think, again, bringing it back to the purpose of the stream, it's another very, very rich thing that you can delve into with your writing, okay? Because it's and I think one of the ingredients of successful writing, not the only one, but one ingredient of successful writing is the ability to get people to think. If you're reading a story and you're thinking, well, what about this and what about that? And particularly if the characters involved are impacted by those decisions, or those thinkings, then it can make for a very compelling aspect to a book. So I tried that with Shayward, and you tell me whether I succeeded. The idea that it was the priestess's religion versus the sort of Renaissance science of the people of Amar, at loggerheads with each other. That was a fundamental premise that I wanted in the Shayward books, the battle between the world views of religion and the world views of science, playing out in a novel environment. That's one of the things I wanted to explore, and that's one of the things I did. And I think that can be very powerful. It can't be the only theme that you have, but it can be a very, very good way to hook your readers in and go, yeah, there's some depth here, there's some thinking, and what about that? And why do they believe that? And why does that impact them? All that sort of stuff. Jonathan, I read some years ago that some scientists taught a chimpanzee to communicate, and they asked it questions about life after death, and apparently it did have a concept for it already. I can't remember the details. Wow. Okay, well, that's interesting, isn't it? So, is that a product of intelligence, perhaps? The ability to think about such problems. Being religion. Yeah, and Commander O'Connor, you're quite right. Becoming religious doesn't mean you're free of all the human vices, does it? Drew Wager is going to Stouffer. Kapla. Yeah. I'm covering my Klingon void. That's why I always wear a hat, because I'm actually a Klingon. Yeah. I don't know. But it's a fascinating. So I think it's a good one to play around with. It's endlessly fascinating. You can explore it in all sorts of different ways. Now, whether you touch upon it with ghosts or afterlives or curses and magic and things from a fantasy perspective, or you play around with it with a technology perspective in a sci-fi realm, trying to capture a ghost in a test tube type thing, or trying to find a portal to the afterlife that using technology, or whether it's kind of like super advanced aliens who appear to be gods because we don't understand how any of their stuff works. All of those things are valid. I think they're quite good fun to explore. Melanie Shrebbed, apologies if I've missed your previous comment. The chat does scribble past a little bit too fast, so I do apologise if I missed your thing. I don't remember seeing it earlier. I do apologise. And sometimes I do just waffle on. That's one of the things that happens on this stream. So apologies if things have scrolled up too far. Actually, since you're here, what was your question? Put it in the chat again, and I'll because I normally switch off about this by the time. But yeah, chuck your question in the chat again, Melly Shrebbed, and I will try to answer it. And again, anybody who sort of joined in and followed and stuff, I must admit I'm technically very inept when it comes to Twitch and things, so I don't have lots of flashy notification things popping up. So if you have followed and subscribed and done cool stuff like that, thank you very much. So Afterlife is monkey brain stuff. That's an interesting thing. Maybe you have to have a brain that can basically has spare capacity to consider such things before you can even construct such a belief system. I don't know. There we go. So manuscript. See if I can find the earlier question. I think it must be miles back. I can't even see it on the chat. Oh no, there it is, way back. I've just found it, manuscript. There we are. Drew Wager says, I have a question. If you could take one thing plus one memory from your whole entire life, what would that be? That's a deep question. One thing plus 1 minute. What would one? Okay, so one thing. What would I take? Is this sort of going into an afterlife? One thing. I'm to be honest, I'm not all that attached to things, so I think I'd find a thing quite hard to take. I presume I'm not allowed to take people. So I don't know. I think it would have to be the hat. The hat. Somebody else has already suggested that. Yeah, I think. See, I'm not all that. I'm not all that tied to personal objects. I mean, I like things. I like having things, like enjoying things, but I don't think I'd necessarily want to take one with me. So yeah, I think the hat. Or at least know who I was. In terms of one memory from my whole entire life. I think I'd probably take my my wedding, to be honest. I think because that was I still look back with great fondness on that, and I'm still married to my lovely wife after many years. She puts up with me even now. So that was a very happy day. I think I'd probably choose that one, which might be again might be a slightly obvious answer, but take a laptop, says Glenn, or a notepad. That's okay. One memory. So take that, children. Yeah. So I mean, because I've got 2 children, so if I can only remember one, that seems a bit unfair, doesn't it? So I remember one child, but not the other one. That seems a bit. So if I remember my wedding, then there's potential to remember the others. Maybe does that help? I'm not sure. I think that's quite a difficult question to answer. But there we go. Take a backup of all my books. Take a USB stick. And my wife does bring me space tea on Saturdays. That's very true. That's very good. Anyway, my friends, it's been a weird and wacky sort of evening, as I kind of expected it would be. So hopefully you've had fun as well. It is it's time to go. Anyway. Thank you very much. I did. It was an eye-opening set of chats and conversations as per usual as well. Thank you very much for your company. You guys have a fantastic week ahead of you. Try not to worry too much about the existential problems of existence and where you might end up when you die. Don't get too concerned about it right now. But I hope you have a good week ahead of yourselves. And take it easy. I will see you on Thursday for more about. We should. Maybe we should cover politics. That could be fun. More No Man's Sky on Thursday, and Saturday we'll be back hopefully with some retro games in the form of Wing Commander. So that's going to be good. But until then, waffle on, right on, and just considering the endless possibilities that the multiverse affords. Take care, my friends, and I will see you soon. Bye now.